whole thing came about, we were fortunate enough to get LSC funding for Invest to Change back in 2007, and one of the things we did was undertake a consultation with young people with LLDD, looking at what is it they wish to move on to at 16 or 18 and where did they feel they had opportunities or perhaps where opportunities were missing. And one message that came out really clear and strong was that they felt they had excellent progression into FE, but perhaps they didn't have as wide a choice into work-based learning as they would have liked. So one of the things we tried to do in 2008 to 9 was really look at spearheading opening choices up to learners, and we looked specifically at learners with severe learning difficulties and learners who were on the autistic spectrum in the first year.
Initially, OSSME was contacted by Hilary Venny to do some training on autism spectrum disorder to work-based training providers. That took place in Speak a few months ago. From that, we looked at the evaluations and found that there were particular companies like Training Plus that wanted the bespoke training to help them support students with ASD in their workplace and their environment. So that has taken place over a number of sessions.
Our involvement as a work-based learning provider has been around seeing how we can break down the barriers for young people into apprenticeships, and we run programmes here in childcare, administration and hairdressing, and they're very successful programmes. So as they become more successful, obviously we're interested in making them more and more open as we can and engaging with young people and with employers in a wider sense.
We at the college identified there was a need to improve transition for young people from special schools into FE. And the project enabled us to release a specialist qualified specialist member staff from our college team to go into special schools in the last year and to undertake initial assessments to look at what level they were operating at in respect to the pre-entry curriculum framework for literacy and numeracy, and look at their cognitive levels and their conceptual understanding, and compose a thorough assessment to then give impartial advice and guidance as to what would be the relevant course in FE.
We've worked at building and spearheading partnership and relationships between providers, specialists such as OSSME and special school staff who've got years and years of experience at working with young people with ASD or SLD, and really building relationships between providers and between special schools, learners and FE.
We're also part of the steering group committee, which again has provided opportunities for us to find out more about what's going on around Liverpool, and to support each other in again providing quality training for people who are working with young people with ASD.
OSSME also are able to tailor-make transition packages both for students and for the employer, and this offers a support network so that the student or young person with ASD can successfully go in from one environment to another environment as smoothly as possible. And it also helps the employer to understand the person with ASD's view of their new environment, to make them feel more comfortable in their new environment that they're going to be entering.
The training is hugely beneficial to our organisation. OSSME gave us strategies we could use to support the needs of the learners. It's given us a great awareness of how broad the ASD spectrum actually is. And then that's given us the ability to help the students to make the transition from education onto employment.
Yeah, it's good because then you bring in more diverse group of people into the workplace, and making everyone else feel equal.
It's really developed our providers in relation to how they support learners with learning difficulties, because that's always an issue for us, is that a lot of funding is designed for what we call mainstream activities, but this is enhancing those with learning difficulties.
we're beginning to open up a really much broader choice of options for learners with ASD within work-based learning.
Just those simple techniques, the very simple ones that don't cost a phenomenal amount of money, can absolutely enhance and make our teaching practice so much more inclusive. In actual fact, one of the obvious ways that we've benefited here in terms of the training that we've received around ASD was that our learner recruitment manager and senior recruitment consultant, who've been recruiting young people onto various training programs for the last 20 years in this city, have sat in that training session and realised that they've been looking at young people who they would consider now to have been on the ASD spectrum over the last 20 years, but previously may have considered were not alert, not attentive, didn't want it enough, and may have been referred on to something else. And I think that in and of itself was a phenomenal milestone really in our learning about the wider agenda of learning difficulty and specifics of that, and something that we can address, quite significantly.
The main success that's come across to me is actually the joint working that's been brought about by the project, really, from a number of committed personnel, and also it's allowed us to work together to find out how we can facilitate opportunities for the young people that we support with autistic spectrum disorder to actually access the opportunities to develop from school into work-based learning, therefore into the workplace and into college as well. It's allowed the OSSME service to develop the role that they have with supporting young people with ASD, and it's been interesting for us to learn what is actually required by work-based learners to help support placements for people with ASD to be successful.
I think we've gained a confidence around the mystique of learning difficulty over time. There's no two ways about that, and I think without a doubt we trailblazed ourselves, not the world or the country, but we trailblazed ourselves on dyslexia, and we've got to a point where we don't get freaked out about it, we don't even get edgy about it now. It's part of our normal working everyday processes to deal with dyslexia, and quite effectively too. And of course that confidence comes across to the learners, so we just get a successful outcome, because everything's about confidence generally. Whatever learning difficulty or disability we're talking about, really what we're talking about is a person's confidence.
I think going forward, some further training for staff at Training Plus, so we could specifically mentor learners with ASD who come on board with us. Also some training for employers, so employers could help to support the needs and utilise the strengths of the students with ASD.
Well, I think what it has been useful is to have regular meetings with other partners in the project to determine ways forward. From OSSME's perspective, we would like to help support and develop a transition package to support young people with autistic spectrum disorder to have a very smooth transition into work-based learning providing placements or colleges. And I can see that we could be integral with the other agencies involved in developing that package, and it would be very much tailor-made to address each individual person's needs.
If the funding comes through for the future, we'll look to develop on this year, because as I said, it's been a really positive project, and we'll look to develop learning in maybe other areas of disability, whether it could be dyslexia or any other type of provision that in conjunction with our partners we feel is needed, and that'll be a real benefit for the area.
What we must remember is sometimes small things are good outcomes and not a great big qualification, which is typically what we expect. Sometimes it can be just about getting a young person to engage in the world on a regular basis, and that's what we might call a soft outcome really, but nevertheless a very, very important one.
What Liverpool wants to achieve with the Invest to Change funding is to really widen choice for young people in Liverpool with learning difficulties and disabilities, so that they have a broad range of opportunities, so that they can have successful and fulfilled lives.